Hello and welcome to the Vicars Watch Dibley,
the podcast where three priests link our stories with those of a Reverend Geraldine Granger and other TV vicars. I'm Kate.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Ruthie. This episode we're talking about the third episode of season 1, which is called Community Spirit. In this episode we have the classic village fair going on, and we explore some of the character development that's happening with our good folks in Dibley. Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing?
Good morning.
We all right?
Very good.
We finally got there after trying to record this for about an hour and 15 minutes.
It's been a bit of a trial this morning, hasn't it? But that's technology.
Hates us.
It really does today.
But it's all been worth it.
It's all been worth it, and hopefully this will be recording well. But we'll see how it goes.
Yes.
So aside from all our technical difficulties then, how have we all been?
I've got a cold again. I think this might be a running theme in our podcast, that I just end up being ill, so I sound bunged up and gross again. So apologies to all our listeners. Hopefully you can hear even better with this new quality of mic, the grossness that I am. But other than that, I'm going to a hen do this weekend. I'm so excited.
Oh,
That's
exciting.
Yeah, my sister-in-law's. So I have a whole load of shenanigans planned.
That's excellent. Can
That's
vicars
really
do hen
exciting.
do's? That's a good little question there, isn't it?
Oh, vicars could do hen do's.
Yeah. they
Vicars
can.
could definitely do hen do's. In fact, I had my vicar at my hen do when I got married.
You certainly did, you legend.
How are you, Kate? Are you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I had family over to stay my weekend. My brother and my sister-in-law and my little niece. And it was really lovely to see them because I lived in the same city as them during lockdown, so I got really close with my niece, and then I moved away for my new job, so I haven't seen her for a while. It was really lovely to see her and spend time with her, and of course my brother and my sister-in-law, but you know.
But mainly the niece.
Mainly the niece, let's be honest. How have you been, Jenny?
Yeah, good, thank you. Things are good. Hotting up. All the plans are hotting up in parish as we're drawing ever closer to Lent now. Although one sad piece of news, one of my budgies died, I'm afraid to say.
Oh, no!
So, I know. So that was a bit of a sad start to the week. But yes, I've been keeping the other one entertained by playing lots of budgie tracks. So he's been chirping along to fake budgies. And I'm just going to try and keep him entertained. He seems to be acting normally, but I just hope he doesn't start to feel lonely. That's my big worry now. But apart from that, all good.
Which one has passed away?
Han, the younger one. He's about 7 and a half.
Right, okay. I think
Yeah.
you just need to hear some hard truths here, Jenny. Which
Is this gonna be
budgie
about-
has survived all your other budgies?
Literally will. He's been alive for like 13 and a half years now.
Oh dear.
I think
Yeah.
the police need to be told about Wilf and his 3 other housemates that he's had.
Honestly, he's something else. I can't even describe it. He's the bird that keeps on going. He's the bird that keeps on giving. And long
Yeah.
may this continue.
Taking out his housemates.
Jenny, are you planning to have a little funeral for him? Because I remember when the last
Yes.
time we came across this, we were all in college together, and we had a fantastic funeral.
We did.
For
We
your dearly
did.
departed.
That was for Jim, wasn't it?
It
for
was
Jim.
indeed for Jim, who was, bless him, he was a really young bird, and what was terrible, I felt so sorry for my mum. He passed away while she was looking after him 1 week, and she
froze him, didn't she?
his body so that he could be brought up to Durham to be buried in the garden. And shout out to the Rev Nathan, who is a good friend who I love, and he took the funeral service. He wrote a eulogy. He wrote the liturgy for the service. We all stood outside, didn't we? He wore his long black cassock. I love
It
that
was
boy.
beautiful.
And I remember digging the grave, and then we all gathered round, buried little Jim. And I remember because a robin came and sat with me while I was digging the grave, and I was like, "Oh, birds, you're so beautiful." So yes, I plan to have something similar tonight for little Hananiah, to give thanks for his life and his beautiful singing voice. Giving praise to the Lord at all times. So yeah, that's slightly funny and sad part of my week. Not funny, sad part, but this talking about it, it's definitely helping. But yeah, that's true. It was the same for Jim.
And talking about your week, there's been quite a lot of sad things this week, but something really exciting happened for you in this past week, which leads us to our new segment, I'm a Vicar, and Jenny, would you like to share your fantastic news?
I super would. So I'm a vicar, and this week I found my wedding dress.
Yay!
Do you know,
So
when
exciting.
I was first ordained, so many people would say, "Oh my gosh, does that mean you can never have alcohol? Oh my goodness, does that mean you can never get married?" And I was always like, I think I can. I think so. That should all work out. If it's meant to be, it will be. And then now here we are. So yeah, I was very excited to find it. It feels like everything's starting to feel quite real now.
Yeah. And obviously we can't ask you any details about it on this because,
Absolutely
spoilers.
not. I tell you what, I will tell you one thing.
Okay.
Go on.
It's white. What a troll.
See, you say that, but there are very big differences. So I've discovered with wedding dress colours and white and ivory and cream,
true.
they're all very different
And
colours
blush.
apparently.
And Moscato.
Blush.
To be fair, when you were right, actually. Blue, even blues. Even black sometimes, for those that
Black
are
wedding dress.
trendsetters. But it is on the whiter scale, let's say that.
Amazing. Amazing. So from glorious and great things like finding a wedding dress, we've also introduced something new to our podcast, which is a section we're calling Confessional, where we apologise and try to make amends for the things that we have got wrong. And this time it's me who needs to be in the confessional, because I made a boo-boo and I need to say sorry. And thank you very much to Jenny's dad, who is a vicar, who called me out on my boo-boo that I made and sent a message to us because I got things wrong about common tenure. Jenny, do you want to read what your dad told us?
Sure. So I think I don't think he meant to call you out in a condemnation way, but he was adding into the nerd that is this podcast. So yes, a shout out to my father, the Reverend Gary Ingram. He wrote into us not long ago to say, "Hi Jen, I love the Vicars Watch Dibley podcast." And he said, "Old Pottle could have still been in post at 103 if he'd been made incumbent before the introduction of common tenure in 2005, which he's put in brackets, which I'm sure he would have been. So if he had had freehold, he could have stayed in post for as long as he liked." And he added a little cheery ho-ho at the end, and dad and some kisses. And then a really great picture of Geraldine, actually, like a cartoon, which I really appreciated as well. So, yes, Ruthie, enter into the confessional.
So I, must say sorry. I got that wrong about common tenure. I did not realise what time common tenure started, and this is super nerd knowledge, but I apologise and request forgiveness.
I am sure that, that would be given in abundance. And again, it's just a joy to know how many clergy nerds are listening and learning along with us as well.
It's not just you, Kate.
For those of us who aren't clergy nerds, common tenure is, I guess it's the equivalent of receiving tenure as a professor at university. It's essentially job security. You're not going to age out. You're not going to be gotten rid of without good reason.
So all that admin done, it is like a church service, isn't it? We've got all these notices to get through before we crack on with the main bit. Let's talk about the Vicar of Dibley.
Epic.
So, this episode, we're going to be going through episode 3 of season 1, and this is called Community Spirit. For some reason, the script for this episode isn't in Ruthie's amazing book of Vicar of Dibley scripts, but
I know.
by some very strange fever, I made 15 pages of notes on this episode, so we've agreed that I'm going to be the one talking us through our episode
I can't
today.
believe you made 15 pages. I've barely got 3.
I feel excited and daunted.
Especially when, for reference, I only made like 5 pages of notes for the first episode. So,
Here we go.
first thing is we have a fantastic opening credits gag. I love
Yes.
this. The local farmer knocks on the telephone booth and waits for a pig to finish using the booth and exit. I love this because it sets a really clear context for the episode. This is in a rural setting.
Pig's got to make calls. It's a very important
Definitely.
businessman. He brings home the bacon.
Not time for the joke section yet.
So, we open at the village hall with a meeting of the parish council, and they're discussing apologies, which are a very common, normal part of any meeting where people who can't be at the meeting have sent their apologies, and that's shared and minuted. Jim, however, doesn't quite understand, and we have this wonderful, hilarious exchange between him and an increasingly exasperated David Horton.
Oh, but I want to.
Yes.
He wants to apologise for not being at something completely different, which is very sweet, and apologies are important, but he's not quite understood.
Exactly. And for me, this exchange just is so Richard Curtis, and it reminds me a lot of Baldrick and Blackadder. Like, I could completely hear Baldrick
Yes,
saying
yeah.
Jim's part after David Horton says, apologies mean you only have to apologise for not being here. And then Jim says, but I am here! I could go away if you like and then come back and apologise for being here next time. Absolutely brilliant.
I found the bit about graffiti very funny in this scene, because when graffiti is done well, it's amusing. So there's a place in Sheffield that's called Pool Lane, and quite often the L of pool is blacked out, and I'm of that kind of level that I find that very funny.
I just got it. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, Pool
And
Lane.
this is really one of the big topics for this meeting. Geraldine arrives and they start talking about the graffiti and vandalism in the village, which really shines a light on the fact that this isn't just an urban problem. We have vandalism, etc. in rural areas as well. And for me, what I noticed when I was watching this is it sets the kind of B-plot character exploration of David Horton and how other people treat David and react to David, and the impact that has on David and how he responds.
And there's lots of graffiti because there's not a lot for young people in rural settings a lot of the time, and that's one of the things that's underfunded. And I mean, what else do you do?
True. And I feel like that kind of feeds in then, doesn't it, to this whole fair that obviously hasn't been making a lot of money, hasn't been attracting attention of big people. We get the kind of vibe that this is a village where, exactly, the youth haven't got anything to do, they're messing around. And when it even comes to like the big events, the only reason everyone's like, I love that line from Owen when he says, everyone comes together. I think Mrs. Cropley says, oh, it brings the village together though, doesn't it? And he's like, yeah, it brings everyone together, saying how blooming annoying it is having to be here. So it's like, you get the idea that this village doesn't have a lot going on. It's quiet. It's not like, bringing in big money when it comes to raising funds, which of course leads us into the topic for, the whole episode really. And Geraldine with another good idea.
So the parish council is meeting to plan the autumn fair. And I don't know about you two, but these type of fairs are just a fantastic part of parish life. You know, you always have them. There's usually one in the summer or in autumn, a sort of harvest festival. There's usually some sort of Christmas fair. And it's always spelt with the Fayre spelling, which to me, that really like messes with my brain, and I really don't like it because it's...
I was doing some reading on this yesterday because I'm being a bit of a nerd about all this. But I was reading up about the Vicar of Dibley, and the romanticism of village life and clergy life, and how that's a part of, traditional English culture, and even things like, I didn't know this, they filmed with a special kind of film over the lens, so it would look all warm and glowy and romantic, and I thought that was really, really interesting. And I think this fair is one of those typical what you think of when you think of rural village life, and you've got the vicar opening it and doing all that kind of thing, and to some degree it's very accurate, as I can account to in different things, but other degrees it's completely wrong, and I suspect you two, well, it might be a bit different for you two, because Kate, you've fairly recently started your post, and Jenny, you were in lockdown for quite a lot of your vicaring so far. So I don't know if you've experienced much of these kind of fairs in your current posts.
So, yeah, I mean, I've only been here a short time, but we do seem to have these fairs. We've got an Easter fair already booked in one of my villages. And because I have 5 parishes which I oversee, sometimes these villages have them on at the same time. So there was, just before Christmas, there was one day where I was rushing between Christmas fairs. And I think, as we see for Dibley, these have a dual purpose, both of fundraising and for community building and community cohesion. Do you find that as well, Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, in my current parish, I haven't been able to, like you say, we haven't had many fairs, but our village is famous for having like a carnival, a literary festival. We have something called the Soapbox Derby, where people literally build their own carts and push them down the main street where there's a big hill, and they build a ramp in the middle of the village, hay bales either side, and like there's little things going on around.
Oh my gosh.
We do it.
When is the date for that?
Is usually at the end of September. It is amazing, to be fair. It's incredibly unique, and I love it so much. I think in my last parish, though, I definitely remember going down to the local school, and all like the stalls with WI had their cake stand, and I remember even from being a child, my kind of semi-rural church, going to like and doing Splat the Rat and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, watching the scenes unfold in this episode really bring those memories back.
Yeah, I have previously worked at a place where they had these kind of fairs, and it was slightly Dibley-esque in lots of different ways, and I think corrupt is kind of slightly appropriate, in that there were certain prizes that had to be given to certain people.
Oh, no.
And yes, definitely. And it was the vicar who always gave out these prizes and all these different kind of things. And it's something I remember from childhood as well, growing up in a vicarage, that there was always, even though I was in an urban setting, the fair happened in the church, and I remember my mum buying a pair of tights from this fair because she'd seen this same pair of tights appear at 5 previous fairs, and no one would buy these horrible yellow tights, and so mum bought them just to get them off the stall.
That's amazing.
And actually, we all grew up in church families, and exactly like you, Ruthie, I have such fond memories. I grew up in a market town parish in Cumbria, and I have such fond memories of going about the village fair with my parents, and it was just a really lovely time. I suppose just like we idealise village life in the Vicar of Dibley, I think potentially in the church we definitely idealise these events and functions as well.
Yeah, definitely. And they're talking about the importance of needing someone good to open a fair, don't they?
Yes.
And I was thinking, as they were discussing celebrities to do this really ages it, doesn't it? And puts it very much in the 90s as to who they want to be there. Michael Fish is the celebrity that they're excited about. But it just made me chuckle.
Yeah, I mean, though at the same time, so we're talking about getting someone famous in so that they can raise a lot more money. Is that, though, I suppose my question is, are these events really about fundraising? And does it really matter if they've raised lots of money or not? Because they don't tell us what they're raising the money for.
Yes and no. in a very Anglican answer, I think. I think when people, as they're saying, they go to a lot of effort for it, and if it gets tuppence back, then you're like, oh, well, what was the point of all of that? So Owen's suggestion about we'll just chuck in 40 quid and be done with it. And I think Geraldine says that, doesn't she, in a way, that she's saying actually it needs to make a bit more money, but it is about community spirit and bringing people together. And so it's a bit of both. I would assume it's funds going to the church.
To the village, maybe for the village hall. Potentially it's fundraising for the village itself, giving money for the parish council to run other events, maybe. Or I guess for the upkeep of the village, paying for maintenance to keep everything nice and tidy.
Get rid of all the graffiti about David.
Yeah, actually, maybe that would tie it all together. If we've had in this episode already talk about graffiti, then it would really make sense if a fundraising is to either put in programmes, get some youth work, or do some tidying up in the village. So Geraldine promises to find someone a bit more famous than David Horton to open the fair. And as we end this scene, we see that David is actually really quite upset by this. And so we move into a conversation between him and Hugo at Horton Manor. And I don't know about you, but I actually felt quite sorry for David here. I know that Hugo points out that there's a good reason that people don't really like David. But as I was watching it, it made me ask the question, does that make it okay that everyone piles in on him in such a public way? We really saw that at the previous meeting with Frank's fantastic passive-aggressive use of minuting to repeat the insults and everyone undermining David. We know that David has a bit of a power trip and he's not the most pleasant person to be around. But does that make it okay?
I think it's one of those things. It's a bit like, not sure if this is if this is fair, but it's a bit like raising a toddler, isn't it? It's like you have to put the boundaries down and you have to say when you can't have things all of your way. And it is really sad because David Horton here is kind of having a bit of a strop, as in he's listing all the things that he's bought and funded and given. And Hugo, bless him, is trying his best to like console him and go along with it. But really, he's coming to a stage in his life where he's got to be confronted that actually this whole village isn't about all the things he's done and people aren't there to massage his ego. And it's a hard lesson, but by the end of this episode, I think there's a real movement for David.
Yeah. I think David is a privileged white cis male, isn't he? And actually, when that authority is challenged, as it should be, he suddenly realises. Well, no, it's not even that he realises, is it? He doesn't like that being challenged because he's used to being the boss and he's used to being in charge and respected.
Absolutely, he's in a manor house.
Exactly, yeah, because he's in that big house, isn't he? And he is lord of the manor. There's that assumption of that archaic kind of established gentry.
It's a challenging of the established power dynamics, and particularly,
yes,
it's already been established that David Horton uses his power for his own benefit, really, as much as he's using it to support the community as well. And this is something which is being explored and undermined in this episode. I do have questions about it, and I think we'll come back to this at the end of the episode about how I think Geraldine handles this and whether or not I think she could have done things better. But what we have is we've got this established that David is suddenly being confronted with not being the big man on campus anymore and no longer being the one that everyone is deferring to.
Yeah.
And we have Hugo's expectations really been set on fire by Geraldine, and we see Hugo's innocence and his joy and his ability to dream, which I think, as we see, becomes a parallel to Alice later on. So we start our next scene in the vicarage, and Geraldine's search is not going very well. She has a big book of Showtime celebrity contacts, and we see her desperation. She gets so excited for a very short moment over the chiropodist daughter of a Beverley sister, which again shows the age, because hands up, I don't know who the Beverley sisters are.
Do you not?
No.
Shocking. But then Alice comes in with her creations that she's made ready for the fair.
Which, honestly, I quite like one. I think if she was selling them on Etsy and she wasn't filling them with pasta, I'd buy one.
Cooked pastas to make sure they're nice and squashy.
Cooked pasta, indeed. And we have this really interesting conversation between Alice and Geraldine about Alice's prophetic dreams, in which an angel has come to her and told her that the fair is going to go really well. And Geraldine, it's quite sweet the way that she kind of grabs hold of Alice and
She
says,
problem solves really well, I think, Geraldine, in all of this.
Yeah. I think that might be quite a naughty angel, don't you? It's such a lovely comment because it doesn't undermine Alice's spirituality and her sense of having a spiritual encounter.
Yeah.
That's true.
But it does question the guidance.
Although,
of this prophetic
that is true, although the angel does turn out to be correct.
about the fair, not about Prince Charles.
That's true.
Sinead O'Connor.
That's true. Good to note that one.
And actually, Geraldine brings us to our favourite segment, my favourite segment, your favourite segment. Where in the Bible is this Bible quote from? Obviously, it's not, as Geraldine says it, we know it's not all from Ephesians, as she says. But is any of it from Ephesians?
I didn't even check because I knew you would.
Yes. So the verse is, my brothers, I ask you two things. First, love the Lord, and second, stop using pasta in your soft toys. St. Paul, for all his instructions, I don't think ever talked to us about using pasta in our soft toys.
Yeah, not as far as I know. Might be in the Apocrypha somewhere.
It could be
So that's
in
not
the
even
Apocrypha.
Paul.
Geraldine claims that this is from the Epistle to the Ephesians, which just means letter to the Ephesians by St. Paul. And I think none of us are surprised to find out that this isn't actually in Ephesians. I did speed read Ephesians last night looking for the key words, and it's not. The irony is, obviously, that in this quote that Geraldine gives, she says St. Paul is asking two things of the Ephesians, when actually the whole of Ephesians is instructions for Christian living, not just two things. And the biggest irony of all is Ephesians 4, chapter 5. St. Paul says, put off falsehood.
So Geraldine's falsehood, just making stuff up about Ephesians, Paul would not be happy with at all.
Well, he probably wouldn't be happy with Geraldine in any way whatsoever.
But I bet he would agree about the pasta thing, to be fair.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
he'd agree.
absolutely, yeah.
So David and Hugo arrive at the door, and I had to bring this up. So David Horton says to Geraldine, I didn't know flirting was on the syllabus at theological college.
I knew you would pick up on this.
Geraldine
So
says,
did I.
oh yes, it's the whole second year. And I must say, I felt very, very exposed.
What? Let's have a vote.
Yes.
Was the whole of your second year flirting, yes or no?
I think it was more the first term of first year.
I can safely say that a large portion of my second year involved flirting, but I married that person.
I was going to say, it all paid off, didn't it?
Yes.
I used to turn up to morning prayer earlier so I could sit opposite him.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I was always late to morning prayer, then I started fancying Toby.
That's really cute.
And suddenly I was early to stuff.
Oh, that's so cute.
Well, it's very unholy of me, but second year did involve a lot of flirting for me, so...
Yes. So, yes,
Seed.
there's lots of flirting that happens at theological college because you put a lot of people who are all passionate about Jesus in the same building together, and when there's lots of them the same age who are single, it is inevitable that we will start eyeing each other up.
So during our time at theological college, there are at least 4 married couples who met at college and have got married as part of that. No, 5!
5 as of this week.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Very exciting.
Yes. And talking of marriages and romance, we have this wonderful interaction between Hugo and Alice in the kitchen.
Oh.
They are so cute! So
Yeah.
cute.
They are couple goals.
They are couple goals.
No, they're not.
in my,
That's my
in
level.
my heart of hearts, Hugo is wearing his exceptionally snazzy jacket for Alice.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, every time.
But what we do see here is just how quickly a flippant comment can become a rumour in your parish. Have you two experienced this, where you've said something offhand and then suddenly it comes back to you? The quickest I've ever had that was within one day. I said something quite flippant, and then later that day someone said to me, "Did you know that people are saying..."
Oh, goodness me. Because the comment is, Geraldine makes a comment about dating Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes.
But apparently, it didn't work out.
Not only did it not work out, but I love that they assume that Geraldine was the one who broke Daniel Day-Lewis's heart.
Oh, absolutely.
They're so supportive.
It's very sweet.
So...
Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head where it's come back that quickly.
No, I
but
can't.
yeah, you do always have to be kind of, slightly guarded as to what you say, because you never know how things can be misconstrued, which I have had that happen in a negative way. But how you say things is really important, because what you say and what people hear is very different. What you intend to say, what you actually say, and what people hear is very, very different.
Or even if what you're saying is a joke, people take it exceptionally seriously. But also because people respect you and take everything you say seriously because they trust you. But also they're intensely interested in you and your life. I think especially if you're a young single vicar, female or male, whatever happens at the vicarage, anything you let on about your private life will be shared. Like when I was moving in here, people saw my eldest brother and his children helping her out, and it quickly became a rumour in the village that I had a husband and 2 children.
Oh.
So when my brother and my niece came to visit this weekend, I was really careful and intentional about introducing people to them, saying, "This is my niece, she's come to stay."
This is my second family. It's weird how me and the male look very similar.
So, as the search for a special guest to the fate continues, Alice reveals that she has a second cousin called Reg Dwight.
I have a little fun fact about this scene. So you know how Alice has got this supposed famous second cousin? Well, in a crossover with real life, the actress Emma Chambers used to live in a village that my mum was a teacher.
Really?
And so Emma Chambers did come and open their school fete.
That's great
that's
knowledge.
lovely.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
That's brilliant.
So she was their celebrity.
That is... Well, I mean, really, that answers my question. I was going to ask who's the most famous person that you've encountered in ministry, or that someone's claimed to know. And honestly, I think that just answers it for us.
Perfect.
We have a short connection scene where Alice is rushing to Geraldine to share some good news. And I think this has my favourite quote of the episode from Mrs. Cropley. "I love her, you love her." And she says, "God's path is for walking, Alice." And then Alice just continues to speed walk through the churchyard, wiggling along.
Just power walks down there, wiggling along.
To find Geraldine, who is playing the organ in church.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that she had this extra skill. It is one of the things that clergy seem to pick up, is being able to play a musical instrument, which is handy if someone is sick or they haven't got anyone to play an organ or a guitar or whatever it might be. So
It's either that or clergy, when you're all alone in church and you're wasting time, you do sort of gravitate towards something which you don't normally get to do, like the organ or
Just have a play.
There
Definitely.
were some days when my dad was looking after me and he had to go down to church, so he'd take me with him, and I used to play hide and seek all over church.
Yes,
So-
me too.
Churches
In
are
fact,
fantastic places to hide.
we used to play that on. We used to play games on Sunday after services, and I managed to find a hiding spot behind the organ, so in amongst all the pipes and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And it never got found. I did very well.
Well, hopefully you did get found eventually.
Oh, yeah, eventually. I had to reveal myself as the ultimate champion of hide and seek. Coming out covered in dust and spiders because I'd managed to hide behind the organ pipes. If the organist knew, I'm sure they would not be impressed at all. But, yeah.
Yes.
So they find out that they're getting Reg right,
Yeah.
and then they start preparing. And David is there with Hugo, isn't he, going into the
Yes.
building? And David's desperate for this to fail, isn't it? And I think that shows a very human desire for things to go wrong.
Or, as my note puts it, this is David Horton's villain origin story. Because what he says is such a villain origin thing to say. Mark my words, they'll soon be begging to have me open the fair.
This is how David Horton becomes the Joker.
Yes. But everyone is excited. They're at the village hall the night before, in the week leading up to the fair, and they're all preparing. They're painting signs. Alice is manically brushing the tail of one of her cuddly toys while making eyes at Hugo. And Owen is concerned about finding drugs for Elton John.
Yeah, I forgot about that. They settle on night nurse though, don't they?
Yeah, that'll do the
They
job.
do.
And in a very vain way, Geraldine's painting outfit is something that I would 100% wear.
Get that.
Yeah.
I hope I could rock that.
And I think actually what we see here is Alice is so in her element. This is such a triumph time for Alice. She's so happy. You see it in her confidence with interacting with Hugo, that she's a lot more forward with him. And she just keeps coming up with more ideas. She's an ideas machine. So coming up with the idea of a fashion walk as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the dressing up outfits.
Yeah.
Which we then get to glimpse.
Which we
Oh
then
my
get to
gosh.
glimpse.
Mrs. Cropley as Marilyn Monroe.
Which, showing my age, because I only remember the 1997 version of this song, I didn't realise Candle in the Wind was originally about Marilyn Monroe.
Ah.
Was it actually?
Yeah, so the 1997 was a re-release and a re-record for Diana.
Oh. Yeah, because I was thinking about that, because Diana gets mentioned later on in the episode, doesn't she? And thought, oh gosh, yeah.
But she was still alive when this
Yeah.
episode was released.
Yeah, there we go.
And I love how Hugo reveals just how comfortable he is borrowing Alice's dresses. And I think he has painted nails as well.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Does he? I
Yeah.
hadn't noticed that. I was wondering what is your kind of go-to dressing up outfit?
Oh, I know mine
won't
straight
be-
away.
Ooh.
So
on.
specific as to say Elton John themed, but I suspect I might know what Jenny says.
What would you go for me? Because I know in my heart of hearts exactly what I am.
I would guess your monkey onesie.
Oh, I'd forgot about that one.
Or your banana costume.
Yes! I bloody love
banana
that banana
costume.
costume. Any chance, any fancy dress theme, I'm like, how can I get a banana to fit into this theme? The first time I wore it was for the theme All the Fun at the Fair, at theological college I was training at, but not our ordinary one when I did my MA. Woo! All the Fun at the Fair, I was like, yeah, that definitely calls for banana. Got to get that out.
I remember, I have a video that I love watching occasionally, which is you, whilst we're at theological college, dressed up as a banana, singing along with the
I
Busker Ed
remember.
Sheeran songs, and it is just, it's so surreal and beautiful, and it warms the cockles of my heart.
That is beautiful. I remember that moment so much. I love joining in occasionally with someone if I feel happy enough. I remember on one of our friends' hen do's, there was someone singing outside the York Minster, and I was just like, I just want to sing with that person. And luckily he let
that was
me.
mine.
Yeah, was it yours? Oh, I thought it was our other friend. Yeah, no, I remember. I just love joining in. Got to lay some serious vocal harmonies down, and especially when you're dressed as a banana.
Yeah. What about you, Kate? What's your go-to dressing up outfit?
Well, we did lots of fancy dress at college, didn't we? We had lots of
you
fancy
dressed
dress
up as
costumes.
me.
I dressed up. I was going to say. So for one of them, we had a red themed fancy dress party. We had to dress up as someone with red hair or something red, and I dressed up as Ruthie. I've got pictures of that. I thought it was quite a good costume. I borrowed one of your jackets, I think.
Yeah, it's a good costume because you wore all my clothes.
I have to say,
it's very authentic.
Caitlin, the fancy dress. This is coming back into Nerdland now for you. I hope you don't mind me sharing this. But when I think of you in fancy dress, I think of you dressed as the 99 Thesis attached to the door. Do you want to explain
I
that?
didn't dress as
That was me.
that was Ruthie, but I dressed
right.
as so.
I'm sorry.
So we had a fancy dress party for, by sheer coincidence. Obviously, October 31st is Halloween, but it's also Reformation Day, the anniversary of Martin Luther and his presentation of his objections to the Catholic Church. So we had a Reformation party.
Of course.
Ruthie dressed up as the 99 Theses.
Is
And
it 95?
Oh yeah, 95.
Confessional time.
Confessional time.
I dressed up as a door and printed out all the 95 Theses and stuck them on me.
And I dressed up as a woman in the house because a lot of the reformers from that time thought that women belonged in the house. And actually, it was a bit of a backslide for women in religion because some of the reformers didn't even want women to be nuns, they wanted them to be wives. But I would say my go-to fancy dress, at least for a long time, was elf. I had some fantastic elf ears. So
nice.
Definitely through my undergraduate degree and a little bit at theological college, I would dress up with my elf ears and reuse and reinterpret. But there was also a fantastic time when me and you, Ruthie, had a bake-off party. And we dressed up as Mel and Sue.
Yeah, we did. That was so good. Yeah. I think I tend to quite often go for a Peter Pan outfit. Peter Pan is fairly problematic at times. Otherwise, I mean, Star Wars is a classic one to go down, I think, for me. But I like mixing it up. I like wearing different things and going... Here's a bonkers idea, let's make it work.
I have to say, for our lovely listeners, if you don't know Ruthie, she is the queen of creativity and will be able to make anything she wants. Because I remember for that party that had a red theme, I wanted to go as a chicken. And I remember you made me a beak. I popped over and you were like, you just fashioned me a beak and like helped me do my wings. It's like anything you want. Yeah, it was amazing. So
I will come up with a solution.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
So, the day of the fair arrives, and Jerry and Alice are waiting in excitement at the vicarage for Reg Dwight to appear, and he does, but it's wrong Reg Dwight.
Oh. I love that bit when she opens the door and she's like, hello, and then looks past him and does that sort of manic laugh when you can almost see it. You literally watch her realising what's happened, and the cringe is so, even now I'm like, it's so cringy.
The whole scene is just so manic, isn't it? And you can just see her desperately trying to hold things together of, oh, pants, what are we going to do about this, whilst not wanting to offend Reg Dwight.
Yeah. Elton, totally over him. That book, it's Ben Elton. That just push out the way. It's so so good.
But you know what? Honestly, I quite like the idea of asking a random person from the community, a random community member, to open a village fete.
Yeah.
I think it would be really nice to give them that star treatment, and it's really wholesome and gospel.
Yeah.
And I want to do it. As long as you haven't bigged everyone up to expect a celebrity.
That's the difference.
There's always the danger of that, of it being quite political though, isn't it? Of who do you pick and who did you not pick, more importantly. And having to remember who did it. It's like during the season of Advent, we have an Advent wreath where we light a candle each Sunday. So 4 candles and then 4 candles.
Hey!
And then a final fifth candle on Christmas Day. And you have to have like the memory of an elephant to think, right, who did I ask to do the candle last year? And who do I need to ask to do the candle this year? And there's so much political stuff with that. And I think having children now as well, I can't ask Ben to do it every year, and he'll get upset because he'll be like, well, I never get to do the candle. I'm like, I can't pick you, kid. I'm sorry, it's just how it is. It's all that political stuff about that. So I think it's a great idea. You just have to have very firm notes about who's done it each year.
Yeah, and it's such a letdown for poor Alice.
Yeah.
You just see her deflate. I mean, obviously she faints, but I feel so badly for her in this moment.
She thought she'd saved the day, didn't she?
Oh.
And then all this happens, and you just bless you, poor Alice. So people start coming to the door, don't they, asking about Elton John, and Geraldine does the thing of putting her hand over the collar so no one knows that she's the vicar. And I thought, I've absolutely done things like that where I've just slipped the white bit of plastic out the collar so I can go, no, it's just a turtleneck.
And the other members of the Dibley Parish Council arrive.
Yeah.
David comes to gloat. And just a side note for something I spotted. Geraldine, there's a fantastic piece of set dressing here where someone has put a book by Edith Wharton on Geraldine's side table. Now, Edith Wharton was the first woman to win a Pulitzer Prize in Literature in 1921. I couldn't quite make out the title. I think it might be The Buccaneers, which is an unfinished novel. And that's lovely because it builds up Geraldine's character in terms of she's reading a book by one of the first women to win a Pulitzer Prize, and she's one of the first female vicars. But what I love most is when Owen comes in, he picks up the book and he's holding it later on.
He?
Yeah, and I love this idea that Owen's got some hidden depths. He's reading some female written literature.
Goodness me, you're so observant.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that at all.
No, the thing from earlier in the scene, for the first time I realised that the big kind of glasses that she's wearing as Elton John glasses, they spell the word boob.
I didn't notice that either.
Yeah, it says boob.
High culture and low culture all in one glorious package.
I noticed the boobs.
Geraldine. I mean, I noticed it too. I've got to admit.
But then the day is saved, isn't it?
Yeah, there's another knock at the door, the final knock at the door, which, of course, we expect is going to be another parishioner going, where's Elton John? When's he coming out? But it's not. Who is it? No other than Kylie Minogue.
Kylie Minogue.
Looking very fresh-faced.
Geraldine Granger is such a jammy so-and-so. Being saved in this way.
Yeah.
She's so lucky. And she sells what we'd call indulgences, for our listeners who don't know indulgences. An indulgence is one of the very reasons we've already talked about for Reformation in this episode, which was a split of the Catholic Church to create Protestantism, spurred by the reformers, including Martin Luther. And one of the objections was that the Catholic Church at the time was selling permissions to sin. And it was, you bought your forgiveness so that you could get into heaven. And that's what Geraldine is doing by promising that Kylie can do anything and she will live it up with Jesus in heaven.
Yeah. Word of advice to any clergy or ministers out there: don't do that. It's a really bad idea.
I know.
And never say no to a priest is also terrible advice.
Yes,
also
I did know
very
that.
bad advice.
Yeah.
Yes, do not teach that to people either. So Jerry talks to Kylie and convinces her to do the fair, and then also talks to her about whether she's ever considered the priesthood.
Yes.
And makes a comment about hot pants, that the priesthood hadn't quite got hold of hot pants.
Yes.
And I have an embarrassing story to tell about this.
Okay.
It was a very hot day. I'd nipped to Tesco in order to pick up supplies, and was wearing quite short shorts for this reason, and it would be that this occasion where I was wearing quite short shorts, I would bump into my bishop, who was also shopping at Tesco, wearing, well, they weren't wearing hot pants, but I certainly was, and he'd suddenly be quite aware of my legs. So,
Yes.
oops. But they just had a bottle of gin in their basket, so I think we're fine.
I think we're fine.
So Geraldine was like, the Church of England haven't quite caught on to hot pants yet, but Ruthie, here you are in 2000 and what would it have been, like 2019, maybe 20, but you have finally brought it back, and now it is.
I'll bring back the hot pants.
You brought it back.
Yeah.
You've made it a thing.
It's a really interesting debate, actually, about what you should wear as female clergy, and I remember being quite irritated by some of the comments that were made. I think we covered this slightly in
We did. We looked at we thought about lipstick, didn't we, and nail varnish and lengths of items.
Yeah.
We almost probably need a fuller debrief, like a theme, like a whole episode to talk about this, don't
fuller
we?
debrief.
Oh.
Hey.
Yeah, this is a topic I think we could say quite a lot on in terms of what female clergy wear and a balance between, obviously, I don't think we really stand by the idea that we're responsible for
The male gaze.
for the male gaze, but at the same time there's a certain element of dressing professionally. But it's such a difficult topic to unpick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us know, listeners, if that's something that you would find interesting, or if that's just us who would find that interesting.
So Jerry leads Kylie to the village fair, and we have her triumphal moment, her triumphal redemption, where she does acknowledge Reg Dwight and introduces him.
I loved that. I thought
did.
that was so great that she could have so easily just gone, oh, forget it, we've got Kylie now. But she introduces Reg Dwight straight away, and I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And sharing a stage with Kylie Minogue. And he came on first. It was just so lovely, brilliantly managed by Geraldine.
Yeah.
And Geraldine ropes in Kylie to help for the whole fair. She pays Kylie to kiss Hugo on the cheek.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, just before that bit, though, they have the whole montage, don't they, of the classic fair scenes, and it did give me that warm, fuzzy kind of glow of, oh yeah, do Splat the Rat and the Tombola and all that kind of thing, of just, it is a scene that goes over all the stereotypes of what you expect in a village fair and the Tombola and all this kind of thing, and it gave me the warm, fuzzy feelings, because I miss doing things like that in lots of ways.
And no parking on the upper field.
Oh dear. Who gave Jim the announcements?
I think
No
Jim
one think.
Jim gave himself the announcement. That was the problem.
Yeah,
because he
Jim
was
the
asked,
announcement.
wasn't he, have you got a stall? And he's like, no, I'm doing the announcements this year. Oh dear.
So Geraldine pays Kylie to kiss Hugo on the cheek, which on one hand is a lovely affirmation for Hugo. Obviously she's doing it to build Hugo up and give him some confidence. But this is such a blow to Alice. Her face is heartbreaking.
It's so sad.
But she's also so supportive.
Yeah.
But you can just see her comparing herself to Kylie.
Yeah, she does like a little smile because everyone goes woo like that. So she does a little smile, like oh yeah for Hugo, and then you suddenly see her face drop, and she like almost bites her lip a little bit, and it's like oh, but that's Hugo. But then it gets even worse, doesn't it? When they're talking, I know we don't want to skip ahead, but when they're talking about it later, again, she's her little face crestfallen.
Yeah.
I know.
And Kylie pockets that 20 quid very quickly. I would think that Kylie's probably all right for money, but she'll take the 20 quid.
This was earlier on in her career.
She still had Neighbours behind her, though, didn't she?
That's true, yes, she did still have Neighbours. She was fresh coming out of Neighbours, wasn't she, at that point?
Was she?
I think so. Well, she was at potentially the height of her fame for that point in time, which is why she's on this episode. And Geraldine's fantastic introduction of her, which I do just need to quote. I don't care what the Bible says about girls kissing girls. I'd snog her any day.
Which I don't think the Bible is quite so specific about girls kissing girls, does it?
No, I don't think it is.
There you go.
Another one to unpack.
Another one to unpack in more than just a few comments.
Indeed.
And on the subject of lips, the question about lippy for a vicar with attitude, I would like to know what shade I should get as a lippy for a vicar with attitude. I tend to go for a red shade. I like a red lippy.
A bold lip.
It's just always the danger of getting it on your teeth. I'd love to get black lipstick. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Whoa.
The emo girl that is still a part of me wants black lippy. If we ever launch a merch range, I think we should create a lippy for a vicar with attitude.
I mean, is there anything much more emo than being a vicar, though? I mean, we wear all black, we hang out in cemeteries, reading poetry, we do ceremonies of life and death.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that.
I would say being a vicar is quite emo. Or at least there is definitely a crossover.
Scarily, there really
my
is.
side fringe. Yeah.
So that really draws this episode to a close. We have a very brief tag on to the end where the parish council are talking about how successful the village fair was.
Yeah. And they're all cleaning up together. And that is so important, isn't it, for events like this? It's really easy to find people who will do the setup and be there for stuff, but finding people who'll do the clean-up at the end is a lot more difficult. When we were at theological college, I was the social secretary for a year and organised various events as part of that, including the summer ball and the winter ball. And getting people to help set up was easy. Getting people to do jobs during the meal was a bit more difficult, but easy enough. Getting people to stay at the end to clean up was the most difficult thing to find. So those people who are willing to stick around and do stuff are absolute gold dust.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the vestry joke, which I do want to talk about because this had me screaming endlessly. I hinted towards the start of our conversation that I have a few criticisms of the way that Geraldine handled some of the elements of some of the dynamics in this episode. And I'd really like to unpack that just a little bit, because Geraldine's human, and actually that's one of the things I really love about this TV series, is Geraldine isn't a super vicar. She doesn't always do things perfectly by the book.
Yeah.
And I think, for one thing I really picked up on was how upset David was, and how some of that could have been managed through a little bit of follow-up. We know that Geraldine, in that initial parish council meeting, she noticed that David was upset. You can see it on her face that she didn't mean for her joke to become a pile-on.
Yeah.
And it's easy for us to say, well, in that situation, I'd have tried to have a quiet word with him before you all left, or I would have tried to call him or drop in on him in the week following to try and do a bit of bridge mending.
Yeah.
And then also towards the end, where she tries to cop out of taking responsibility for her mistake with
using period
with
pain,
women's troubles,
with an excuse about being on her period. I was really unimpressed with that. Like, I know it doesn't play out like that, and everything does sort of work out in the end, and although she didn't really manage people's expectations particularly well during this whole episode, everything does work out through divine providence at the end.
Yeah.
But this is real ministry. We do make mistakes. We don't manage things perfectly, and a lot of ministry is making up for and repairing some of the things where we step wrong or other people step wrong.
Oh yeah,
because
definitely.
human relationships are messy.
Yeah.
Very true.
I don't know if you guys are similar to me, but I get really cut up, and I get those kind of really gut feelings of, oh, I've really ballsed up here. I need to do something to make amends, and apologising is so important when you're clergy.
Yeah.
That, you know, it says something a lot when you have done stuff wrong and you need to apologise. There's also the difficult line you need to toe of having the authority in situations and deciding, making those judgment calls about people and how you deal with them. So I wonder if Geraldine leaves David alone in some ways to try and get him to realise what he's doing.
Yeah, it's a part of his like spiritual and personal growth in a way, really, isn't it? He definitely goes on a journey, as we said earlier on, and actually at the end it does really feel like there's been a shift, which I think we continue to see play out throughout the whole of the, you know, all of the seasons, actually, not just season 1 but all of them. Which is quite exciting, really. And you sort of glimpse the long-term impact of having someone in your life that not only encourages you but also challenges you. And as I know in ministry, like, it's such a gift to be able to be on the receiving end of that, yes, but also, you know, be leading that change in others as well. And reflecting with people as time goes on. That's the thing, isn't it? It's day in, day out. Ministry isn't just like, hit and run. It's, living alongside people truly and encouraging and challenging.
I wonder if that's why as well that Geraldine goes so all in with trying to find a real celebrity to open the fair. Not to undermine David, but to justify everything that meeting was about. And to sell the dream and to sell this idea to David that you can dream bigger as a community. Because part of being a vicar is encouraging people to dream and think optimistically and have plans and vision for their community. And of course you're balancing that so that it's not unrealistic, but there is definitely something about being the driving force helping people to dream bigger.
Yes, definitely. And having that vision and doing big picture stuff and is just, it's so important. It can be absolutely exhausting as well, though, if you're the only person who can kind of see a bigger picture of how things can be. If people have been just so used to how things are or don't expect anything of themselves or the community, that things can improve or be different or whatever it might be, that's an exhausting vision to carry. But I do wonder with Geraldine as well if there's a little bit of pride in there that, you know, she wants to get the celebrity to be like, up yours, David. Look what I did.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think, I don't know what it is about this episode, considering often I'm quite antagonistic towards David Horton, but this episode I just really felt for him, and I almost wonder whether part of his, not to overanalyse him as a character, but I wonder if part of his desire to dominate and his desire to be the big name on campus, to be the one who is supporting the community, the linchpin of everything, is because he's lost a little bit of that dream and sparkle that anyone else could help. We know he sees everyone else as incompetent. Yeah. But has he just been worn down over years where he now thinks he's the only one who can get things done?
Yeah, that's potentially part of it as well.
Which is quite a heavy note to end on. So let's switch tracks to that fantastic vestry joke, which is a bit naughty this week, wasn't
it? Oh, that's a hard one.
It's a hard one. Again, we see Alice's innocence. She just doesn't get it at all.
It's so lovely.
It's so lovely. And really true, I think. Often, clergy, we don't always have the sanitised sense of humour which everyone expects us to have.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the naughtiest people I know are clergy. I won't out them on here, but absolutely. Because do you know what? We've probably heard it all before anyway, in some way, shape or form. It's the kind of details that you get of people's lives that sometimes you just really don't want. There's nothing you can really say to shock us But it seems like for some people that's a challenge, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm going to say something rude in front of the vicar.
Yeah, or people apologise. They say, like, a very mild swear and be like, oh, I'm sorry, Vicar. And you're like, oh, no,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Oh, I don't know if I can say this in front of you, Vicar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've probably heard it before.
Yeah. I've probably said it before. I was in the hairdressers the other day and had been chatting and bantering with the people because I was the only client in there. And so chatting to all the staff there. And eventually it came out that I was a vicar, although I'm not a vicar, but I am a vicar. And suddenly the level of swearing in the room dropped down massively.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you ever noticed someone, once they've realised you're a vicar, suddenly check their behaviour and apologise to you? Like, once I was walking to church in a previous parish and someone was walking their dog was doing its business, and they weren't picking her up after the dog.
What?
And then they saw me and they looked so guilty.
As
and
they should.
apologised. Yes, but at the same time, it shouldn't take a vicar walking past.
Pick up the poo.
Pick up the poo.
Amen.
So what have we learned this episode?
I think it's something about taking responsibility for things that don't go well. It's a good thing to do that.
Yeah. I have to say, out of all the episodes, I feel like this is a bit of filler, not a killer. There are some good lessons learned in here, but it's definitely not in my top 10 of episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It has a setting which is so idealised ministry in terms of the village fair, and it does explore some quite complicated topics, whether because it's actually doing that or because we're reading into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, it's not the hardest hitting of episodes or even the funniest. It feels like there's a lot of character progression.
Yeah.
So I guess that brings us then to the end of our episode, episode 3 of series 1, Community Spirit, where we've had a look at the joy of the traditional elements of rural and other ministry with their community fairs, the challenges that brings, the ups and downs. Also, as we've noted, lots of character progression, looking a bit more closer at David Horton and following the rise and fall of his ego being challenged, not easy. Thinking also about Geraldine and especially a shade of lipstick that would go for a vicar that has attitude. We've covered a lot in this episode, haven't we?
We have.
Yeah. Look out for when we start selling lippy for a vicar with attitude.
Yeah. All shades will be taken into consideration, so if anyone has any ideas, send them in. So then, as always, we would love to hear your thoughts or your questions, and you can get in touch with us in a variety of ways. If you are on Instagram, you can connect with us. Our handle is @Vicars Watch Dibley. If you're on Twitter, you can tweet us, and our handle is @Vicars Watch. If you're on email, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is vicarswatchdibley@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Facebook as well with Vicars Watch Dibley. Again, we'd love to hear from you.
We'd really love to hear your feedback on these episodes, other than our mums saying, aren't they lovely? You're doing such a good job. We love that, mums. Please keep telling us that too. But we'd love to know what you have thought about this, what's been interesting, what's boring, what you'd like us to cover, all that kind of thing would be really helpful to help us plan what we do in the next few months, years, decades, millennia.
No!
We're going to live forever with Jesus. Amen.
We'll still be doing this podcast in heaven.
Yeah.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Vicars Watch Dibley. Thank you to Toby for editing our ramblings.
Any views expressed in this podcast are our own and don't necessarily represent those of the Church of England or any other organisations with which we are affiliated.
And as always, bless you for listening.
So, Darth Vader goes shopping at a bakery in France. He buys 3 loaves of bread and 2 apple tarts. Why do you think he does that?
Because he's hungry.
Because pon, 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 ta ta tan, ta ta tan.